Employees of Reddit. I was just accused of stealing water. What crazy accusation has an employee or supervisor made about you? Time clock thievery while doing volunteer work. By God, this man can steal time itself. I was working retail at Best Buy at the time and they had me working in MP3 players' cell phones despite the fact that DVDs video games were really more my wheelhouse. But I worked where they told me and I did my job well. During Christmas season, it got really busy so everyone was running around helping every department. I was hanging out in my own section when a woman comes over, asks about some headphones, and I help her. She then asks me if the Dance Dance Revolution Mad Cass match she bought for her daughter is any good and I ask if she has any of the games. She didn't, and showed her a slightly more expensive, but better, copy of Economy mat with a game. She thanked me since she didn't even know it needed a game and went off. My department manager comes up behind me, tells me to meet him in the break room in 5 minutes, and rips into me. He says that the department with the best revenue gets bonuses, only true for him, not for the rest of us below him, and we shouldn't be helping customers in other sections get more expensive things. He says he'd be shocked if I made it past the winter. I just say yes, sir, and go back to work. Come January, I get fired by department manager recommendation. So, when you go to Best Buy, know that all the departments have their own agendas with you. Couldn't you tell the actual manager? I'm getting fired because I'm helping the store make more money. I had an employer of mine write me up for stealing trash. In reality, at the end of my shift, one of my duties was to gather all the trash. Oftentimes, I would pick through the trash and sort all the paper, pop cans, and water bottles in our company's recycle bin. We had a special promotion with our trash company in which our company would get money based on the number of pounds we recycled. It ended up being $1,500 per month and we didn't pay our trash bill. So long story short, I got a final write-up for stealing company time for sorting our recyclables. So I stopped. The following month, our manager was peeved that she had to pay a trash bill. She called the trash company and the company told her that the past 2 years she didn't pay for trash because our company would recycle so much. We would get a $1,500 check and free trash service. My boss thought that the checks were a bonus for her. Anyhow, the district manager was reviewing the write-ups and saw I got written up for stealing trash. So he called me up and asked me what was going on. I told him the story about the trash company and their promotion. He congratulated me for a job well done. The next day he flew in to talk to my manager. He asked my manager what happened to the $20,000 that she got from the trash company. Apparently, she tried to pin it back on me, and our district manager promptly fired her. After escorting her out, he called me into the office. He told me what happened at that meeting, and offered me a promotion to assistant manager. This is a wonderfully redeeming story. After working at Subway for 5 years, 3 of those being a manager, I was accused of turning off the cameras in the store and getting high in the cooler. I quit shortly after. Turned out the owner was trying to set me up to fire me. Should have let him fire you. Went to the clinic with the pink slip and submitted all sorts of drug tests, then came back with your clean results and a lawyer's letter. I once used the phrase more than one way to skin a cat around a manager who had never heard the phrase. She called me into her office later to ask why I was saying such disgusting things, accused me of being a sicko who kills animals, and then threatened to fire me if she heard anything like it ever again. The funny thing is, that phrase originally said there's more than one way to skin a catfish, you know, to eat it. I was called a racist because I didn't really talk to or interact with one of my fellow employees beyond what was needed. I had to explain to my boss, who was also black, that I wasn't a racist, I just didn't talk to this girl because she was incredibly annoying. What workplace requires equal socializing or even socializing at all? Can you imagine being the CEO and getting that email? I can just imagine the look on his face. Or, maybe worse, being the HR person and knowing that no matter how ridiculous you think this situation is, you have to pretend to take it seriously. If this happened in my company, it would be a good indicator that the person complaining was creating a hostile environment and displayed poor judgment. I got accused of stealing a salad. I worked as a cashier at a grocery store while in high school. Because they had scheduled me 6 1/2 hours. I only qualified for a 15-minute break, not a 30-minute. So I spend the first 8 or so minutes of my break on the phone with a mechanic working out issues with my car. I then run back to the little cafe near the back of the store that has a salad bar and make a quick salad, which you weigh and price there. By this time I had about 5 minutes left on break, and the manager was very strict about not going over your 15 minutes. So I stand at the cafe register for a good minute, and no one is to be found. I quickly eat my salad, and then take the sticker up to the front registers to pay for the $1.99 salad. I go back on the clock, and about 20 minutes later I am called into the office. They say a situation has occurred, but don't tell me what. They said they are sending me home for the day. So I come back in the next day for my shift, and they call me into the office again. In the office is the store manager, the assistant manager, the office manager, the cafe manager, and my shift supervisor. Mind you, I am a 16-year-old kid at their first job who had never been in any sort of trouble. They accuse me of stealing the salad because despite purchasing the salad, as our records do indicate, you consumed the salad before the purchase. I explained to them how the cashier at the cafe was nowhere to be found, and how if I wanted to eat during my break at that point, I would have had to eat it back in the cafe and then pay for it up front. They tell me to go home, and that they will contact me tomorrow regarding if I keep my job or not. I left in tears, but then got really angry at the severe overreaction. So I came back in an hour later and told them I quit. I have managers that schedule us for 2 3.5-hour shifts 15 minutes apart to avoid giving us paid 15 minutes breaks or the 30 minutes break. Good thing is that if you call them out on it they give in. Unfortunately most employees don't realize what they are doing. I worked in a souvenir shop at an amusement park. It was the 4th of July, one of the busiest days because of the park's fireworks show. We were also understaffed. The shop was just inside the gate, so it would get swamped just before closing, as people bought the stuff they didn't want to walk around with all day. I was left alone in the shop just before closing time running the cash register as people flowed in. It was utter chaos. While closing out the register that night, it was noticed that a large stuffed animal had been stolen. The manager simply could not fathom that one person manning a swamped store can't prevent theft because not all the displays are within sight of the register. I think it must have been a team effort, with 1 or 2 people getting my attention in one area while the other walked off with the toy. But I didn't say that because I really didn't know when or how it happened. Bastard accused me of being in on it and looking the other way while a friend stole it so we could profit later. I didn't even know what to say. I was 17. It was my first job, and I cried for days under the assumption that every job I'd ever hold would be like that one. There's 6 stacks of cash to be made on the underground giant stuffed animal market. I used to work at a retail store and I had a beard. One day my boss told me to get rid of my beard, so I came back the next day with a mustache. I was then told I had an attitude problem. For the last time, Mattingly, trim off those sideburns. I've posted this before, but my boss thought I was goofing off in the restroom. For a few months there he wouldn't let me flush the toilet until he came in and made sure I actually used it. Sounds like someone had a special fetish. Back when I was in high school, I worked for my town's parks department. One time, my boss, who was a total sleazeball who sexually harassed every girl there and hated me mostly for not being female, calls me into his office. While there, he accuses me of stealing a $3 check and then says that I have to be let go. I tell him point blank that if I was to steal from the dept, it would be something a lot more than a measly $3 check. What the heck would I do with that anyway? Later on, I find out from a friend of mine that he found the check underneath his desk, and then a month later someone finally reported him for harassment and he got fired too. Karma's a BO. Last night my manager called me stupid and uneducated for not cheating a customer out of $15 due to a computer error. She thought it was obvious I should lie about the error and garner another whopping $15 for the struggling hospitality industry. Today I go in for a meeting to get scolded for not lying, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to burst into tears. Frick that. Hold strong knowing you did the right thing. You saved a person $15 that they shouldn't have had to spend. That is 2 hours of minimum wage where I live. Made the company look great. and I won't doubt if you just secured a lifelong customer. You did the right thing. Don't let frick-ups bring you down. My first job with the state was awful. My supervisor was an idiot in every sense of the word. I remember once, I was called into a meeting with our bureau chief. He asked us some questions about office matters, and my supervisor flat out made up lies about me that were completely against my character. I couldn't hold in my frustration and blew up at her. Told my bureau chief I wasn't there to play childish games, and then walked out of the meeting. I ended up winning that one, and got a promotion that paid twice as much as that terrible supervisor. It was one of those awesome revenge moments where nobody got hurt. Well, no one of any value anyway. When I worked at Circuit City, I had an 80GB iPod that my dad had given me because he no longer needed it. It was practically brand new. Even when I first plugged it into my computer, it came up as Richard's iPod. Well, one day it's in my purse that I kept under my counter while I was working. It goes missing. I couldn't understand how it had gotten stolen. It had been one of the slowest days ever. Nonetheless, I was pretty freaking bummed out about it. This happened during a time where the case we kept iPods in was broken and it was terribly easy to steal them, and many had gone missing. Fast forward a few weeks later, my co-worker tells me my recently left for another job debt manager thought I was the one stealing iPods and that he got into my purse when I wasn't looking and took it to check the serial number, but never gave it back because I was flipping out and causing a bit of scene walking around asking everyone if they'd seen anyone take it. I was so freaking pissed. In one of my darker life periods, I was doing part-time tech support for a dinky computer shop here in town. The owner was a pill-popping nut job that kept a loaded gun in a drawer in the front desk and regularly cheated his customers. Anyway, I'm working one day, and one of the other techs who had been there forever and a half tells me to go install a modem in some guy's computer. I'm shaking my head, because this is in 2009 and I can't believe anyone would be requesting a modem. I ask him if he's sure before I go out there. He said he was. So, I go out, and sure enough he doesn't need a modem at all. He needs a wireless card or adapter. I call, go back to the store, get the card, head back to the customers, install it, head back, and yell at the guy for being a dumbass, as common sense would tell anyone reasonably competent that he didn't need a modem. Long story short, next week the boss comes in and fires me because the other guy made up some absolute crap about me drilling a hole in a motherboard to fix a PC, which made no sense whatsoever. On my way out, I rolled my eyes and said fine, whatever, grabbed my stuff, and left. The owner freaks out and follows me into the parking lot yelling and screaming and ranting and raving and trying to pick a fight. I just calmly walked to my car, went home, and had a beer. I found out later that shortly thereafter the other guy was busted for fraud and the owner went bankrupt, shortly before popping a ton of pills and blowing his brains out. I worked in retail as a cashier at a pet store for a long time, and occasionally when there was nothing going on I would just grab a couple tennis balls and juggle them to keep myself amused. I'm pretty good at it, can do 3 in all sorts of weird ways without looking at it or thinking about it, so I converse with customers perfectly normally when I need to, and most of them find it funny. If I didn't think they would, I'd stop before they even made it close to conversation range, and I'd done it long enough that I was a pretty good judge of that kind of thing. Cue a day such as that, I'm bored and juggling while I watch the front door. Family comes in with little kids, they laugh at the juggling and come talk to me for a little while about reptiles and juggling, while I try to teach one of their sons, 5 or 6 years old, how to juggle because he asked me to. Good times were had by all. They walk off and do their shopping with their little son trying to juggle the mini tennis balls I gave him. Immediately get called into the back by the assistant manager who, with another manager present as a witness I guess, decides he's going to rip me a new one for being disrespectful to the customers by juggling and not giving them my full attention. I respectfully, perhaps sarcastically, no promises, disagree, and when he looks to the other manager in the room to back him up you could just tell the guy was completely uninterested in getting involved, and he basically had nothing bad to say. Assistant manager continues to lay into me a bit more, says he's going to work with me on not being disrespectful like that and if it continued we'd have to have a talk about my employment. I leave. Month later, new store manager gets hired, walks to the front with the assistant manager and sees me juggling. Assistant manager gets the look like he's about to rip me a new one, but the store manager laughs, compliments me on my juggling, goes and grabs his own tennis balls and starts juggling too. Ah man, the look on the assistant manager's face, priceless. Have an upvote from a fellow juggler. Mine isn't nearly as compelling as others. A year after I started working for a company as a graphic designer, turned out I was also the marketing and web design departments as well. My wife got pregnant with our first child. This was an office filled mostly with middle-aged women. I was in my mid-late 20s, and they were all excited, even threw us a baby shower. All goes well and my son is born and I take 2 weeks vacation time to be with my wife and child. 2 weeks I had saved up. I come back and my boss is suddenly very aloof and non-communicative with me where previously she and I were pretty close. This goes on for several months until I learn budget cuts have eliminated my position effective in 6 months from the time I found out. Through my co-workers I found out that my boss was PI had a baby and that I wasn't dedicated to the cause. She was also at the budget meeting and initially there were no cuts to our division but she threw me under the bus saying my work was non-essential. So here I am with a young family and staring down the barrel of unemployment. Turns out though that another company had been following my work and were eager to sign me on. Needless to say I didn't do crap for the next 6 months and am now happy at my current position and making more moolah to boot. Their company is now in the shitter and I poached one of their biggest clients on the way out. TLDR. I wasn't part of my ex-boss's fascist view of the future since I started a family. I would assume someone who just had a child would be even more dedicated. A friend of mine used to work for a well-known communications company. One day the CEO of the company visited the office. He went into the break room and counted the supplies. He then announced that he could tell from the proportion of coffee to sweetener that people were stealing the sweetener and taking it home. He then ordered the discontinuation of coffee service for all company offices. His name was Bernie Ebbers and it wasn't too long after that he was indicted for the biggest act of corporate thievery in history. I know this isn't an accusation that was made by an employee or supervisor, but I figured I would post it here anyway. About 5 years ago my neighbor accused me of stealing his fence. Yes, his fence. He said something along the lines of him knowing that I had taken it, and that he just wanted it back. I still don't really know how to respond to something like that. I've tied your fence to the railroad tracks ready for the 5 o'clock train. However, your mailbox is on the other side of the city, surrounded with explosives set to a timer. Choose. Mwahahaha. I worked in the stockroom of a Gordman's and I was accused of stealing a security cable that goes on jackets. Yeah, what would I do with one of those? Oh, and it turns out, our store didn't even carry those cables. It was my phone charger I had in my hand. I worked at Sears, and I gave someone 0% financing for 6 months, might have been a year, I honestly don't remember, on their Sears card on a purchase. I thought we were running a promotion, turned out we were not. Later, they threatened to fire me for stealing, saying I had stolen the money they might have made on the interest if the person had not made payments. I don't think it counts as stealing if it's money that they never actually made. Not me, but happened to my best friend and I freaking love this story. He works at a very large pharmaceutical company. Let's call them Jimson and Jimson. He is at the San Diego office. Now in San Diego it hardly ever rains, so very few people have umbrellas. Well, on the day of the company Christmas party it happened to be raining. In the lobby at the security desk they have a pool of umbrellas to loan out to people that don't have umbrellas. Great. So my friend borrowed one, went to his car and drove off to the Christmas party. A good time was had by all. At about 10 PM, after leaving the Christmas party, he gets a phone call from his department manager. Did you take an umbrella? Huh, did you take an umbrella from the lobby today? Oh, yeah, dude, return the umbrella. Yeah, I will bring it back tomorrow. Number, I need you to go bring it back. Right, now. You can't imagine the trouble this has caused. Well, it turns out that the understanding on the umbrellas is, you return them same day. You are supposed to take the umbrella, go to your car, then come back to the front and run in to return the umbrella. Someone who I can only imagine is both a huge bee and was having a bad day, needed an umbrella and went to get on from the front desk to find there were none there. She asked where they all were and the security guard, who I imagine was also having a bad day and is a huge prick, told her well sent his friend borrowed 1 hours ago and never brought it back. This woman then went on a rampage calling HR and the manager of the entire site, and my friend's boss, and everyone else she could think of to complain about the sanctity of the shared umbrellas being violated. Luckily cooler heads prevailed and nothing came of it, but for a few hours the fact my friend borrowed an umbrellas was treated by many people at J&J as if he had stolen the recipe to the cure for cancer. I used to work for a Kroger in Little Rock, Arkansas as a cake decorator part-time. I was never actually trained for the job except how to properly put frosting on the cake or how to make a shell border. Everything else was pretty much self-taught. I used what artist skills I have to not only do a shell border, but add Art Nouveau style borders with it, as well as create custom character cakes for birthdays if our store didn't have the cake kit to make it with. I had created cakes that were unique. I created a premium chocolate cake by using chocolate frosting, then using malt balls to create grapevines all over it. It sold 15 minutes after I put it on the cooler, so I had to make another. Also, you know those little cupcake cakes where they take a bunch of cupcakes and make a character? Yeah, I did Goombas and Mario mushrooms from those. After working there for about 3 months, the bakery manager called me over to the side and told me that the head cake designer complained that I was too slow at making the cakes, and because of that, I was now required to stand up for 7 hours straight making sandwiches until they feel I can become fast enough to make cakes again. I later found out that from other employees that it wasn't that I was slow, it was because no one was buying the cakes she was making. This story is especially upsetting because it deprives the world of awesome cakes. In high school, I had got into a fist fight at a party, and my opponent had popped me in the nose. There was no bruising to my face, so there were no obvious signs of the altercation. I worked at a grocery store, and the next day I was helping my manager pull cases of toilet paper off of a high stockroom shelf. I was up on the rack, tossing the cases down to him. While doing this, my nose started bleeding again, and dripped blood on his pristine white shirt. He got incredibly angry, pulled me into his office, and accused me of doing C on the job. He suspended me right then and there. Also, I was in a work program with my high school, and it nearly caused me to fail that portion of the class. Fortunately, I was in a union, and filed a grievance. I got paid for the time lost, and had my grade for the work program class restored. But none of this was easy, and I was being accused of being a drug abuser the entire time. I experienced several nail-biting weeks where I wondered if I was going to be able to graduate. Living in Boston at the time, and the city got hit with an epic snowstorm near Easter. Like the good little worker bee I am, though, I shovel out and brave the state of emergency to limp up the highway to work. State of emergency means that many business, and sometimes the highways, are shut down. An adult snow day, if you will. When I get there, I just get to work, but my manager feels the need to castigate me for being 20 minutes late. I give him a yawn interesting specimen look, and get back to work. That night, I had a previous engagement planned. I had already cleared leaving early with my manager, and I'm a salaried employee. When the end of the day neared, I packed up to go home, a whopping 30 minutes early, knowing that I would probably be a bit late due to the snow, but also knowing that the company is very sensitive about clocking out early. So I walk out and am trudging to my car, when, you guessed it, my manager comes running out again. He asks me why I am leaving early. I gently remind him about my prior engagement, and the conversation we had about it. He says, yeah, but you came in late this morning. You have to make up that time or you are stealing from the company. I just looked at him. Then I turned around and left anyway. What a small person he is. I don't work there anymore. TLDR. I left for work early, after coming in 20 minutes late due to a horrific snowstorm. Manager accuses me of stealing company time. It's people and experiences like this that make me worry about entering the workforce. Hold me, Reddit. Tell me not everyone's a shithead. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.